Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Skagly Bones, back with another video. Today I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks for finding and buying your bike. Now this can be for buying your first bike, it can be for buying your second bike, or it can be buying a different type of bike. So whether you're buying a road bike for the first time, or maybe you're just trying to get a different style of road bike, or perhaps going the other way and getting either your second or your first mountain bike. Perhaps you've only ridden hardtails before and you're trying to get a full suspension bike. So more than likely you're going to be buying a secondary bike. Perhaps you're buying your first bike, and like I said, hopefully these tips and tricks that I use for buying my bicycles and getting my equipment will help you no matter how you're doing it. So let's begin. So one of the first things you want to do is make sure you get the correct frame. So first thing you want to do is choose your material. So in my case, I tend to use a lot of aluminum. I like aluminum. I'm a bigger guy. I am a heavier person, and aluminum tends to be a little bit more crash resistant. Now, can aluminum be damaged over time? Yes. So aluminum does have fatigue life to it over a long period of time. If you use the wrong type of frame over time, eventually you can actually stress crack welds, and that can be pretty damaging. Can it be fixed? Yeah, welds can be fixed on a aluminum bike, but if you actually get a crack somewhere where there isn't a weld, then a lot of times it's just you just got to toss the frame. Carbon fiber can be fixed, but it can also be very costly to fix a carbon fiber frame when it cracks and breaks as well. But you have to, that's one of the first things you need to do, is choose what kind of frame you have. Both my road bike here, my Giant, and my Diamondback here both use aluminum frames. And of course the quality is quite different. As you can see, the welds are very easy to see on this Diamondback. I'm not saying these welds aren't well done, but it's very obviously where these welds are. Whereas if we come over here to the Giant, it's smooth weld, where they've polished down the welds, made it extremely smooth, very light welds. And that doesn't also mean that it's less, I would say not as strong. If done properly, these can actually be quite stronger than the non-smooth weld technology that they use. But if it done improperly, it can also lead to some cracks and failures as well. But it's the same thing with also how they lay up carbon fiber bikes. And I will say this for you, if you have a specific budget, you want to go with the best frame that you can get for your money. So it's better to get a high-end aluminum frame like this versus a low cost or low budget carbon fiber frame. So always the higher end or the best frame that you can get for your money is the best, has always been the best thought process in buying a frame and buying a bike. Okay, the next thing you want to do is make sure you get the proper size. So whether it be a 52 centimeter, a 60 centimeter, a 58 centimeter, whatever size, or like some bikes, as you can see here on Giant, they go by the extra large, large, medium large. As you can see there, that's a medium large frame, a medium frame, whatever. Make sure you get the right size for you. And if you're not sure about what size frame that you need, go to your local bike shop and have them fit you for a bike. Now you can actually take measurements, and you can go online and look at sizing charts for the frames if you know what you're doing, and you can actually get fitted for a bike that way, or fit yourself for a bike. But you want to make sure that you have at least the best frame size for you. And then there are some general guidelines. For instance, and I'll just use one example, is for large frames, typically, which is a 58 centimeter frame, typically that's good for a person that is between 6'1" and 6'3". So that frame size will fit those three different sizes of people, okay, or everybody in between. Okay, the other thing you want to make sure that you get is, once you've chosen your bike, chosen the style, is make sure you get the proper components. So on this bike, for instance, I have a 105 group set. Over on my mountain bike, I have a Levio group set. Okay, and both these are what we call external bottom bracket or press fit bottom brackets. So it has the bearings that are press fit into the frame, but they sit external and closest to the crank arms. Same thing with here. These are threaded in bottom brackets, cups that thread into the outside instead of being a sealed cartridge bearing that sits on the inside. And the crank arm is not as strong as it is on this type. So the press fit bottom brackets or external bottom brackets, the crank arm is going to be a lot stronger. So going with that type of componentry is going to be the best thing for you. So do some research about the components that you're going to get on your bike. So whatever bike you find that you like, make sure you look at the components. And this, like I said, for road bikes, 105, and I've said this before in previous videos, is what I think is probably one of the best bang for your buck sets of components that you're going to get, especially if you get an entire group set that is 105. Now sometimes with Giant you can get a full set of Ultegra for only maybe $100 to $200 more, and if you can get that, go with that, especially since they tend to put carbon fiber wheels on those slightly higher end bikes that you spend $300 or $400 or more dollars, and those carbon fiber wheels tend to cost about $1,000 if you buy them separately. So if you can do that, get that type of bike, get the Ultegra group set. But for the most part, if you can spend or save quite a bit of money going with the 105 group set, go with the 105 group set. Other thing you will want is make sure you get a saddle you're going to be comfortable with. As you can see here, I have an ISM Adamo saddle, and it's a very unusual looking saddle, but this is the most comfortable saddle that I've found for myself. Now that doesn't mean that you can't use a saddle like this. Whatever, you got to make sure that the saddle that you get is comfortable for you, and don't scrimp on the saddle, because that is one of the biggest things that can provide comfort for you. Okay, so one other thing that you want to make sure you have bottle cages, whether it be on your mountain bike. On your road bike specifically, you want to have at least 2. On mountain bike, it's a little less important because you can go with a hydration pack. I at least always have 1 bottle cage so I can have a slightly different type of liquid. Normally a liquid that is, because I'm not going to put Gatorade inside my hydration pack because then it creates a funky smell to it. So I have my Gatorade and I typically keep it in my bottle cage. I always have myself a frame pump, and that just, instead of a small, you can get small little portable pumps, but those tend to, especially if you're dealing with a mountain bike and you're going to be pumping tires or pumping up pressure in them depending on your road conditions, or letting pressure out, I like to have a slightly larger pump, and then this one actually has a gauge built into it so I can tell what my pressure is, so that's really handy. And I have pretty much the same thing, just a cheaper version for my road bike. I have a gauge, it has a gauge down here, and this is a slightly cheaper version. Obviously it goes the same pressure, but I do a little less having to fiddle with my pressure on my road bike. I'm not decreasing my tire pressures or increasing my tire pressures for a specific given ride. I will typically always keep my tire pressure about 95 psi all the time for my road bike, whereas on my mountain bike I change pressures constantly. So you want to have yourself, typically for your mountain bike, a really good style frame pump if you're going to be doing that quite a bit. Some other things you want to make sure you have besides your components, besides your what frame you want, is make sure you pick out make sure the bike has a good wheel set, and make sure the wheel set is set up for how big you are as a person. So as you can see here on this mountain bike, it has way more spokes than my road bike has. This set of wheels is called a lightweight set of wheels, and the fewer spokes you have means the less weight it can actually physically handle before spokes start to break. But the other thing you need to look at is how the spokes are actually set up on your wheels. And if you have any questions about that, you can go online and you can look up more videos on actually how to tell that. I've actually done a couple of videos on how you can kind of tell what spoke setup is good for what physical size you are as a person. So the bigger you are, the more spokes you want on your wheels. 250-pound person puts a lot more pressure on their wheels than a guy who weighs 150 pounds, obviously. So a guy who weighs 150 pounds can get away with fewer spokes than a person who weighs 250 pounds. That's just something to consider. Another thing that you want to make sure you have as well is make sure you have bike tools. So with each one of my bikes, I have a set of tools. This one is for my mountain bike, and I keep inner tube in there for my mountain bike, as well as I have a mountain bike specific tool. And some people say, well, why would you need a mountain bike specific tool? And the reason being is this has very specific tools more geared towards my mountain bike. So it has things, yes, it has the same tools that my road tool has, but it also has a thing for the brakes, so that I can actually fix brakes if the brake rotors, if I needed to. Obviously, if I had a road bike that had disc brakes, then I would use this tool, the same tool. But as you can see here, this has a tool that I can pry apart the brake pads if I need to, if they ever get stuck. And also I can bend the rotors back in shape if I need to. So always get the proper tools for the bike that you have as far as recovery tools are concerned. Always make sure you have an extra set of patch kits, so in case you run out of inner tubes, that you can always patch up the inner tubes you do have to at least get yourself home. Now, it's not always so imperative if you get a number of punctures that you keep riding and continue to ride another 30-40 miles, but a lot of times you'll need to get back. And so especially with a mountain bike where it's very common to get pinch flats because of the lower tire pressure, it's always good to have at least one patch kit. Okay, and then of course make sure you have some tire levers as well. If you're going to be riding at nighttime and you have a light, make sure you have extra batteries as well. That's always helpful. Okay, same thing pretty much for the road bike. You want to have yourself a nice tool kit, and I always make sure that I have a decent saddlebag that I can always hook onto the back of the bike like so, and it'll strap on there, and it'll be nice and aerodynamic so that it doesn't catch the wind. I don't want something on the front of the bike that's not convenient for riding and for training, so I always use a saddlebag. And you can get some even smaller saddlebags than this. This is the perfect size to keep everything in, and then I don't have to have everything in my jersey pocket. And then the other thing you want to make sure you do have is good pedals. So I have some road specific pedals right here. These aren't super expensive, but they're very good carbon pedals. I've done a review on these, long-term review, as well as we got the Crank Brothers pedals, and these as well are not expensive, and I've done a review on these as well. Now you can use these pedals on the road bike. I would never use these road bike pedals though on the mountain bike, but you can use the mountain bike pedals on the road bike. It just means you're going to use more of a mountain bike specific shoe like I have here, and that's going to be a little bit better for walking. So if you're doing commuting, things like that, where you need to walk, you need to go places, or you do a lot of in-town riding, I would go more with a mountain bike type of shoe. If you're just riding to go out on group rides and things like that, and you're not stopping, you're not going into the coffee shops, you're not going shopping, anything like that, a road specific shoe will work perfectly for riding your road bike. So make sure you get yourself a set of shoes that clip into your pedals. You're going to get better power transfer, and also your feet aren't going to slip off your pedals. It does take you a little bit to get used to riding with these, but once you do, you're just going to get more out of your riding, and it's going to make it more enjoyable and more fun. And then last but not least, always get yourself a helmet. Okay, this is something that a lot of people forget about. They forget about their bike kit. So when we say bike kit, we're referring to helmet, we're referring to sunglasses, we're referring to your clothing, referring to your, how should I say, your gloves, everything. So here we have a mountain bike helmet. As you can see, it's got the visor over it, gives you a little bit of protection there. I mean, you can use this for everything. You can, I'm not saying that you cannot use a mountain bike helmet for road biking. I'm just saying that this helmet is a little bit more built for for mountain biking, and then you have a little bit more road specific, more aerodynamic type of helmet for road cycling. Okay, but make sure, now safety wise, they're both going to be about the same. Now with the mountain bike helmet, as you can see, it has a little bit more protection in the back. A road helmet has a little bit less protection in the back. But overall, you're going to get the same crash protection. Make sure you have a helmet. Never go anywhere without that helmet. It's stupid. Too many people have bad accidents without their helmets. And of course, there's some other stuff that you can get. You can get jerseys, you can get bibs, you can get your shorts. Make sure you have gloves. I have taken many falls on my bike and landed. You're going to always land hands down. It's very common you land hands first, and the last thing you want to do is scuff up your hands. So have yourself a set of gloves. Also, the gloves will help to prevent wear and tear on your hands, even with nice grips. Over time, it's just going to wear out on your hands. It's not going to be as comfortable. Your gloves are going to have some padding in it. As you can see, this has some very specific padding in the gloves, as well as some ventilation here, and that just makes gloves are a very inexpensive way to keep yourself comfortable on your bike. So make sure you have gloves. Obviously, these aren't full-fingered gloves. If I'm mountain biking, I want something that's a little bit more full-fingered, because as you're riding through the woods and things like that, the last thing you want to be doing is cutting and slapping your hands and your fingers. Keep yourself comfortable. Get some good gloves for when you're mountain biking, especially when you're mountain biking, because the last thing you want to do is you want to fall off your bike and you want to fall down on some rocks and just cut up your hands really bad. So make sure you have yourself some decent gloves. There's lots of different kit things that you can get. I always at least have a jersey, even if I'm not going to be wearing specific cycling pants. If I'm just doing some commuting or some mountain biking, I at least normally have a jersey. The jersey has pockets in the back which allow for you to keep extra food and extra water if you need to, and maybe an extra set of gloves, as well as a extra set of maybe cycling glasses. Make sure you get, you don't necessarily have to have something expensive for glasses, but I would get some sort and form of eye protection, okay? Because as you're riding, and I've said it in other videos as well, you're going to get stuff that goes into your eyes. And the last thing you want is when you're going down some hill at almost 50 miles an hour sometimes, the last thing you want is something to go in your eyes, because it's going to be pretty painful, and then it's going to do damage to your eyes. You want to keep your eyes in good shape. Okay? So hopefully that gives you some good things to look about when you're buying your bike. Also, one last thing, make sure that if you're going to do anything with your bike, that you buy, if you're going to be doing anything at all, make sure you get yourself a track pump. I don't use a track pump. I got a compressor with a special attachment for the bike, so I don't actually need a track pump, but you get yourself a track pump. They're not expensive. Get yourself some chain lube, get yourself some basic cleaning stuff for your bike, and that'll keep your bike running. I have lots of videos on how to do maintenance yourself. Lots of videos out there helping you to do maintenance on your bikes yourself. If you follow those videos, you follow those tips, you can keep your bike running for a long time. I'm not saying don't ever take your bike to the bike shop, but for most things you can do it yourself. It's like changing oil on your car yourself. You can save yourself quite a bit of money by just doing that one simple thing. Obviously, no one pays somebody to put gas in their car, and you shouldn't do the same thing. So feed yourself, learn how to feed yourself obviously properly, learn how to do some basic stuff like oil your bike chain, check your bike chain, and you'll keep your bike lasting for a long time and riding for a long time. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button up there, and like always, keep riding.